toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Head toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Head toss.
All right, I think we are ready to go, gentlemen. Welcome to Super Saucy episode 8. Really excited to have everybody. We are coming to you the day after the NISCUS Winter Conference, and all of us back in action in our districts. Not that the action ever slows down when we're not actually physically present in the district, but back in our seats, and really excited to have a conversation with our keynote speaker from Sunday to open the conference, Luis Cruz, educational consultant and author, and he crushed it. Really nailed it. Did such a great job. And I'll tell you, Luis, we were talking before we started about how that's an audience, our colleagues, we love them, doesn't hesitate to weigh in on whether or not they love the keynote, and people definitely express themselves with a tremendous amount of sincerity when they do that. And over and over and over again, people had great things to say about you.
Thank you. I got to add that to my resume for sure. Always a tough audience, superintendents are. So the fact that it resonated makes me feel very good, and that hopefully they took something away from it. So thank you for the honor of being invited, and thank you for the kind words.
You bet. We were joking before about how the audience might be tough because there's a lot of knowledge in the room and not a lot of hesitation to share it.
Well, I'd
and
rather
the
have some
opportunity
knowledge,
to give
right?
feedback when we're always taking feedback.
There you go. Well, thank you guys. I'm very happy that it went well, and honored that you've invited me to be part of your podcast. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate you being here. I feel like you should have gotten a hockey jersey. In our continued evolution of the Super Sauce swag, Dr. Andrews very generously has hooked us up with the next iteration, which is just fantastic.
I know all I got is a black sweater, guys. Sorry, that's all I could do. But I appreciate the fact that I feel the synergy. How about that? I feel like I'm part of the team for at least the next couple of minutes. So thank you.
Love it. Well, you sure are. So, just want to start out. You really nailed it with us around this idea of transformational leadership, and you talked about soils and seed and the need for both in the district, which was amazing. I also thought that your origin story was compelling and fascinating for people to hear about. And we were thinking that our listeners would probably appreciate the opportunity to hear a little bit more about that too. Kind of that start, and the origin story from the barrio, and where you really evolved as a human, your school experience, which I thought you told an amazing story about the impact of one teacher, how you became a para, what happened after that, and all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, I guess a career built on a lot of great experiences to land in front of this group of people having this conversation. Can you tell us more about that? It's really inspiring to hear about.
Yeah, thank you. I think, to be honest with you, my story is a testament to how other people impact your journey in life, and maybe not realizing it until later when you look back and reflect, right? That individual who heard me speak Spanish in the parking lot of a supermarket I was working in and saw some potential. And then later on, when I became a teacher, a professor in college, Dr. Cardenas, who was the chair of our Chicano Studies department, really seeing in me the ability to speak. It's something that I had never really thought about, but he invited me to a conference one day where he said there was going to be 10 high school kids, 12 high school kids, and that he wanted someone to inspire them because they were of Latino descent as well. And I remember thinking, man, 12 is a lot of people. And when I got there, it was 120. And I remember standing in front of them, telling my story about how I grew up in this little community in Los Angeles and how I was able to find my path, and then realizing that it resonated with them. And so that's when I discovered that maybe the ability to speak in front of large audiences was something God had given me a gift for. I didn't see that gift. Dr. Cardenas, my professor, saw it. And I said, "Why did you lie to me?" He says, "Because I know you wouldn't have come if it was 120, but I knew you could do it." And so along that journey, moving on after being a teacher for many years, administrators that were part of my life, Dr. Lynn Kennedy and a friend of mine named Dr. Stephen Keller, all seeing in me this potential and helping me along the way. Professors in my doctoral program later in life, Dr. Rado Gawa, just amazing professors that were able to see in me something that I didn't see. And so this idea of becoming an author was one that I never thought of because, growing up, learning English as an additional language is not something that you aspire to do and become an author with. But again, other people like Dr. Anthony Muhammad, like my friends Mike Matos and others who encouraged me to put my thoughts and ideas into words. I'm here today because of educators and people who were influential in my life, seeing in me what I couldn't see. And so now that I have a platform, if you will, if I can say that with humility, and one that allows me to share with others what I've learned over the years, is truly an honor. So that journey has been influenced by people that saw in me what I didn't see at the time I could do. And I'm grateful and honored that I'm here because of their vision and their ability to see in me what I couldn't see.
Sort of kind of highlights the responsibility that leaders have, right? To be looking behind you or looking down the ladder and bringing people along with you, right? And making sure that your name is said in rooms that you're not yet in, to bring folks along.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, my journey is the source of my moral imperative continues to be my journey and the countless educators I meet around the country who want nothing more but the best for their kids, right? Superintendents, administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals. We have the potential to really dig deep and help kids that don't see a future, especially in today's very complicated age, to see that future and make something of it. And I don't want to talk, turn this podcast into a Hallmark story, but a Hallmark movie, but it's true. I mean, that's what we're still in the game, right? So, being part of a network, a family of educators who help kids break free from the cycle of poverty, help multilingual kids discover their superpower, help kids that have an IEP realize they can, not that they can't, is truly an honor. And I think it's something that we sometimes forget on this journey of education.
Yeah, listen, Luigi, beautifully said. And, we've had some successful keynotes before, and, and every keynote delivery, we hope that someone has something to take away. But I think that some of the more powerful addresses that we've heard, and yours is certainly among them, are the folks that tell about the power of one, because that really is a message that we need to internalize and bring back to our districts. The impact that a singular teacher, a singular member of the staff can have on the lives of a student or many students. And it just takes that one to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, have you considered? Hey, have you thought about? And that really is what resonated most with me about your story, is about the one person who said, hey, come join us, and just opened, that world of opportunity to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And how powerful it is when that one person finds the other one person and then finds the other one person. And now you've turned it into a team that is dedicated to the work of not offering kids an opportunity to learn, but ensuring that they learn. And that to me is still what drives me. So as tired as I am on this road trip, the fact that I get to influence others to see what we're talking about is what drives me, because kids in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Albany, New York, in Eggtown, Egg Harbor Township in New Jersey, those communities where I'm never going to meet the kids that are going to benefit from the work, but to know that I influence some of the adults that work with them in a small way to carry out the mission of helping these kids learn at high levels is what continues to drive me. And so I'm proud to be part of this educational community, if you will.
It's paid forward is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, one of the things that I wish, and it never happens at our conferences, is that you'd had sort of the full opportunity. So when you do a keynote, it's generally 90 minutes, not 40 minutes. And so all of the things that you have to sort of parse out. And especially when you're told it's going to be more than 40 minutes and then it doesn't happen. But one of the things, and full disclosure, I've seen Luis speak many, many, many times, and I've always been amazed, not only with your ability to connect with the audience, that's terrific. There are others that can do that, but you get them to do things that I've never, like, they would walk out of the room if I were to ask them to do. And I think that powerful connection that you make quickly, and one of the things that that I took away, but I not for the first time, was when you're talking about leadership and the idea of transformational leadership, that you really, your message to the people in the room wasn't so much about what they specifically needed to do, but really about how they needed to empower others, and thinking about the guiding coalition. And I thought you did a really great job of, this isn't just renaming the leadership team the guiding coalition, but really kind of the things that a guiding coalition needs to do in order to transform a school or a district. Can you talk just a little bit about those things then, once people get tapped on the shoulder and you get this group of people that you convince that the opportunity to learn isn't enough? Talk a little bit about that. How do you go about empowering that group of people?
Yeah, so a couple things. First of all, I've learned over the years that when it's about, how do I say this? I think it's important to understand and embrace the fact that we're one of the few professions that can be ethically greedy. Like, we want not just some kids, we want all of them, right? All of us remember that line from a 1980s movie called Wall Street, where the gentleman playing Gordon Gekko, I think it was Michael Douglas, gets up in front of that whole audience and says, "Greed is good," and we kind of stare at that part of the movie and say, man, how much more can billionaires want, right? But we are a profession where we can literally say greed is good. And if greed is good, meaning more kids, we're going to have to get other people involved in this idea of leadership, right? So I came into the profession as an administrator thinking it was about me leading others. And then I realized over time that it was my capacity to get other people to lead that really mattered, because that's how we would feed our greed for all kids to do really well, right? I could influence the organization in a way where more kids would learn, but some would be left out. But if I got others involved in embracing the synergy that we could create to help all of our kids be successful, that really sort of was part of the learning that I discovered as a leader, right? That it wasn't me, it was a team of us. And who better to influence other teachers to take on that challenge of change than teachers? And so I think it's about really understanding that as transformational leaders, the transforming is not initiated by one individual, it's influenced by a team of people. And if we tap into these people that all have that strong moral imperative to want to help kids, and take the one and one and one and turn it into a team, now we can have serious impact on the organization. And so, tapping into the science of our profession, I always say that we're professional educators that have a preponderance of research on how to turn a school into a very high functioning school. So step one for the team would be to learn that science, understand that science, and then advocate for that science. And who better to do that than teachers in front of other teachers? But then to also learn the human dynamic of this, which is why people resist, what keeps people who love kids and work hard from changing a system never created for that outcome, and understanding the human component of this. So to empower a team to take on this task, I think it's a combination of learning the science started in the 1960s via the effective schools research, and learning how human beings in our organization um, tick and what makes them embrace change and what makes them want to commit to uncomfortable change. And so when you combine both those two um, areas of knowledge, I think sky's the limit to how far you can take it, right? So, and as far as the keynote goes, just to answer that, what I realized is that when I first started keynoting, um, I used to watch Anthony Muhammad and Mike Maddow's keynote, and I thought to myself, I want to be like them, and realized I couldn't be like them. So I had to find my own sort of style for doing that. And I realized that keynoting is just really good teaching, scaffolding for the audience, making sure that an anticipatory set, i.e., the Twilight Zone, captures people's attention, right? So, really good teaching is still what I use when I keynote, and hopefully that really good teaching influenced others to really reconsider leadership being a we versus an I. I hope I answered your question, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely did. Just kind of follow up to that. So I don't know how long ago. I remember you really making the point about not confusing transformational leadership with other types of leadership. This is not servant leadership. This is not like it. Can you talk just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when I did my doctoral studies, my PhD is in institutional leadership and policy studies, and I realized some of you might remember there's a classic book from back in the day called Managers of Virtue. And it's a book that talks about how, at one point in time, the kind of leadership we needed in schools that fit the time that we were living in, where we needed managers. We needed people who told people, this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to do it, and either do it or you're out. And the kind of society that we had back then that did not require all kids to learn at high levels really was okay with that kind of leadership, right? But you heard me say in the keynote that a big realization for me, and something that many of us don't realize because we're so in it, is this idea that because our schools do not exist in a vacuum, when things happen outside of our schools, it influences the way we do things in school. And one of those influences are the economic structures that our kids are going to inherit. So I'm very, very concerned. While everyone, I get it, is focusing on the war that we're now in and some of the political drama that continues to happen in our community and in the nation, what I'm watching closely is the fact that hidden behind all those headlines are the fact that more and more businesses are firing their employees because AI has taken over what human beings could do. That reality is going to have to change the way we do business in schools. So I think we have a big disconnect between what we teach kids, what they learn, and whether or not what they learn can actually help them outside in the real world. That's going to necessitate change within the organization. And so transformational leadership, when you study the intricacies of transformational leadership, one of them is it's leadership for change. So when organizations didn't need a change, we didn't need transformational leadership. But now that organizations need to change because the way the world is functioning or existing now requires us to change our practices and change the way we do the business of schools, transformational leadership is perfect for what that requires because at its core, transformational leadership is needed when organizations need to change. Now we just got to make sure that the change that we advocate for is done in a very, very thoughtful, intentional, and effective manner that gets people to be empowered to embrace the change, understand the difference between uncomfortable and unreasonable, and proceed with an organization much more aligned to what society is expecting from its students.
And I thought the metaphor you used throughout your keynote of nurturing the garden was so on point. And by the way, compliments for not referring to the work of the superintendent as spreading fertilizer, which I was anticipating might come up at some point. But really that soil and that base, and it's some real key takeaways there, and even for a veteran superintendent, which I certainly am, that piece about buy-in really struck me. When you're asking someone, your words, when you're asking someone to buy in, perhaps you're really just asking them to sell out and
Yeah.
adopt your ideas rather than nurturing the ideas and the inspiration of their own, and looking instead for ownership, and instead looking for commitment. And that really struck with me, because it's a different mindset of how to try to nurture the growth within your organization.
Yeah, and I got to give credit where credit is due. One of the great things about my world today is I get to hang out with really, really smart people. And Dr. Anthony Muhammad is the person that really introduced me to that analogy and this idea that we don't want people buying in. Him and Mike Matos are very, very passionate about we don't seek buy-in. We seek people to commit, right? I've heard Anthony often say, when we all became fathers and mothers, we didn't buy into being parents because we would have all sold out the minute it became uncomfortable. Instead, we decided to commit to being fathers. And so, as a father of 3 girls, all of them adults now, I'm still committed to being a dad for the rest of my life. That's the same kind of frame of mind we need in the work of schools, right? As leaders, we don't want people buying in because, as you reminded our audience, people sell out the minute it becomes uncomfortable. What we want is commitment. What we want is people saying, through thick and thin, as hard as this is going to be, there's some serious consequences to what will happen to our students if they leave our schools unprepared for what society is requesting or demanding of them, rather. So I'm glad that that resonated. And this idea of seeds and soil, right? Seeds is technical change. Soil is cultural change. What I find in my work is that we spend a lot of time on the seeds aspect of this, and we should, because seeds matter, but not enough time on tilling the soil. And my experience and my research has led me to conclude that the vast majority of site leaders, district leaders, pretty good at distributing seeds, not really good at how to till the soil. And so these seeds never grow. And that's why curriculum companies and all these companies that sell seeds for schools make a lot of money because every year they know people will go in search of new seeds and buy my seed, even though we all know that seeds don't grow unless soil is tilled. So food for thought for our audience, right?
Sure.
Louise, you again, really inspirational conversation with us, and I love it. I'm curious if there was something that you'd recommend leaders do tomorrow, right? If they feel like they're not in this place, what are some of the practical, hands-on, here's the first thing you ought to do? And I realize I'm asking you to condense a lot of PD into like a quick conversation, but walking away from these kind of snippets, I think leaders love to have okay, I ought to be thinking about this, this, and this, and I should do this.
Yeah. I think the first thing that leaders need to ask themselves, specifically in schools, is who are the influencers on my campus? Who are the, especially teachers on my campus? If I'm a district leader, who are the teachers and site administrators in my district who can really create a strong collective entity that is going to spearhead the changes that we need and our kids deserve? How do I move from leadership being me to leadership being we, right? Who are the influencers? Who are the critics that can help us see things that maybe we don't see because we're so excited about the change, right? My good friend Mike Matos often says that there's a difference between a critic and a cynic. And we want the critics and the believers, to quote Dr. Muhammad, on that team. We want to make sure the cynics don't make their way onto that influential team. So the first thing I would do if today I was asked to be the superintendent of a district or the principal of a school is, all right, I'm going to hit the ground listening. But as I listen, I'm going to really keep my eye open for the influencers on this campus, the people who still believe all kids can learn at the highest levels, regardless of labels placed on them. And are these people the answer to the opportunity gap that we're trying to address. Because if I feel that they have influence and passion, I'm going to create a team of people to really take on this challenge. And together, we're going to ensure that the necessary changes required actually happen. So that's what I would do if I was to talk about the first move. Tap into those others who will help us become a powerful we.
So you build a team, that collaborative team. And you mentioned in your keynote too, the idea of then really engaging that team and making sure they're driving some of their discussions, a lot of their discussions, and that transformational change also on what do the numbers tell us, and really digging into
Yeah.
that piece. How do you facilitate that conversation? What are the kinds of questions you ask those people?
So I think one of the takeaways from our book and the research that Dr. Muhammad and I did is that transformational leaders,
That
thank
book.
you, use data to persuade, right? I love, I never met, I often say I never met W. Edward Demings, but I love his quotes, right? Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. In God, we should trust, all others bring data, right? And so how did my doctor convince me when I turned 40? I turned 55 in a couple of weeks, but 15 years ago when I turned 40, how did my doctor convince me that I needed to change my diet and that 3 cheeseburgers a week wasn't cutting it? She showed me data in the form of what my blood test revealed. She never scolded me. She never lectured me. She just said, look, here's the data. And my concern is that based on research in my field, if we don't commit to some changes, especially because your father and grandfather both had heart attacks before they were 55, then you're going to follow in those footsteps. And so the choice is yours, but the data is very clear that we need to change. That's all I needed to hear because I'm a rational person to say, all right, maybe not 3 cheeseburgers a week, maybe one a month would work, right? So in that same way, we're going to have to, as this team of leaders, use data to persuade. And that's why in my keynote, I introduced 4 different whys. Now, you're not going to find the 4 whys in the book because this was an afterthought. Hence, while at some time, why sometime in the future we'll write a second edition. But here's the deal. The institutional why is when we use language from our institution, those vision and mission statements, coupled with student achievement data, to both celebrate where things are going well. Hey, we're living our mission statement. But then question, what are we going to do when we're not living our mission statement? Are we going to change our mission statement to say some kids, because these English learner kids still don't learn, or are we going to really dig into the practices that can help us live our mission statements with English learners? So that's the institutional why. Then we have the professional why. We have a preponderance of research on what to do. How about we use it? How about we actually start using the research in our field to actually begin to mold the kind of organization we need? We can sue doctors for malpractice, but when we commit malpractice, no one ever mentions, hey, you know what? You guys could have helped my kid learn, but you didn't because you refused to use best practices in your field. So that's the professional why. The societal why is we all know what happens to kids when they don't learn. There's a link between not learning other variables and prison. There's a link between not learning other variables and serious health concerns in the future, right? Jason and I, and I'm sure many of you have seen that time bomb video that my friends at Solution Tree have, where in like 3 minutes, you see all the statistics of what happens to kids when they don't learn. And so that's a societal why. And then the personal why is when we use qualitative data, stories of kids we've helped to remind one another, to lift us up, to lift up one another so that we continue to be committed, not bought into this work. So 4 different kinds of data: student achievement data, research data, data of what happens to kids when they fail to learn in schools, qualitative data in the form of stories of kids that we have influenced. Those are 4 tools that with data can be used to really, really influence and change in mindset. And so how often we use those tools, what I'm finding is not as often enough, right? So transformational leaders use data to persuade. The key, though, to echo the words once again of Dr. Muhammad, is that data needs to be used as information, not condemnation. And when we start using data as a weapon, then we lose people because now that trust factor is gone. Hence, we have to use data as information, not condemnation.
One of the things that strikes me is when you think about that, it's easy to sort of have kind of the good and evil. These are the people who are righteous, and these are the people who are not, and all that. And so we sort of can be in this, well, just tell them what they need to do. And one of the things that I thought is so great in your book, and having seen you teach this, that the whole hope isn't a strategy, right? So what's
Yeah.
your strategy? And I remember well Rick DeFore talking about the 7 ways to change someone's mind, and working on Howard Gardner's work.
Yeah.
And it's a strategy, it's a process, it's a protocol, and it's not hope, it's not just telling. And one of the things that I really like in your book is you sort of take the same concept, that there's a process, and the resist protocol,
Yeah.
and really thinking that a couple of parts, the 7th R in 7 ways to change someone's mind was require. The in the resist protocol, the last step is tell, but they're both last. It's the last thing, and it is the thing that is reserved only for the building or district leader. The other things you can empower people on your guiding coalition to do. Can you talk just a little bit? I know we're going to wrap up here shortly, but that idea of the steps, the process, the strategy, the protocol in terms of leading people to change their thinking.
Yeah, so the golden rule that we note in our book, that transformational leaders adopt, is support precedes accountability. Transformational leaders know that human beings can't just be told what to do. We're a little bit more complex than that. And so transformational leaders will begin with support. In the book, we reference support as investments that must be made. So I just shared 4 investments that can be made, or 4 approaches that can be made to invest in people that have a cognitive need for not understanding why something needs to change. When people have an emotional need, meaning they don't trust who's telling them to change, we must invest via using empathy coupled with credibility to create trust. As long as we remember, trust does not mean like. Third investment we make is we help people that have functional needs. Functional meaning I don't know how to do this. I understand why. I even trust the people advocating for it. I just don't know how. So we invest again in making sure that we teach them and they learn how to engage in that change. But after those 3 investments, we have to make sure that we tap into the last part of that golden rule. Support precedes accountability. Accountability is no longer investment. Accountability is now seeking a return on investment. And I find that some schools really struggle with that. We have to address the behaviors that are leading to the lack of results that we're seeing in our kids. And so we came up with something called the resist protocol. It's a way of tactfully confronting. R, recognize that whatever you ignore, you endorse, to quote another good friend of mine, Dr. Cindy Pilar, who does a wonderful job of reminding audiences of that. E means evaluate. Have we supported enough? Have we given enough thought to the investments? S means select the language and location where this tactful confrontation is going to go down, because language and location matter. I, initiate and inquire the tactful initiate and inquire. In other words, initiate the tactful conversation and inquire. Help me understand why we're not seeing you embrace this change. And then based on their response, select your response. If they say, I just need more support, I don't understand why, I'm having a tough time understanding how, then invest some more. But if the answer is, I just don't want to do it, and no one can make me do it, teachers can do resist, stop at S. Administrators now have to do the T, tell that individual, we're not asking, we're expecting. We've given you everything needed for you to embrace this uncomfortable change. And now you're making it very clear you just don't want to. Yeah, that's not acceptable. So accountability is tactfully confronting and saying, I'm no longer asking, I'm expecting. And until I can trust that I see it happening, I'm going to monitor your behavior to make sure it's happening. You don't have to love it. You don't have to be thrilled about it, but I have to make sure it happens because kids' lives are at stake. So
And
that piece, resist, is going to be an important part of what transformational leaders use to both support and hold our faculty and staffs accountable.
And bringing it back to those whys each time really keeps that
Yeah,
level of urgency extremely
absolutely.
high. Kids' lives are
Absolutely.
at risk.
Exactly. I mean, come on. We all know what happens to kids. Why is it that 85% of the kids in juvenile hall are functionally illiterate? Why are our prisons filled with people who can't read? I can't wait for there to be a president, I don't care what party, that says my first executive order will be making sure everyone can read. That would be dynamic. That would solve half of our problems, I think. But until that happens, we, the educators, are going to have to be the ones that use support and accountability to basically say on our watch, these kids will learn. And we're not going to allow your fixed mindedness to become a barrier on that journey.
Well, one of the things that I really like about it is this is sort of the corollary to loose tight, tight loose leadership. That it's that and it's easy, I think, to approach that as here's the list. You know what we really need to do is provide people with our list of tights, and I think there's value in that for sure, right? So I can't meet your expectation if I don't know your expectation. But to your point of the list is not an investment. It's a list. And so now really looking at those areas to invest before we get to tell. So I think sometimes it can be the shortcut, and we'll do it via email even, so it's less personal. Here it is. Here are the tights. This is what you need to do. And if you don't, now you're in trouble. Versus really thinking about that support first. I also think that it's an interesting piece of that is support doesn't always feel good. Support isn't always just the pat on the back at a boy. You know, I saw my trainer this morning and she supported the heck out of me. And I didn't like 1 second of it. You know, some of hers, she's mean, but that really thinking about it through that lens of support and then accountability, I think is something that not only makes sense, it's doable for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think sometimes the list is filled with seeds and other actions need to be taken so that the soil is ripe for those seeds, right? And so transformational leaders really, really embrace that idea of we're going to start with investments, but we're not going to be afraid of seeking a return on those investments. Half the schools I go to do not invest enough and they go straight to return on investment, and that creates anxiety. Anxiety becomes frustration. Frustration becomes misery. Misery loves company. And now you have a case of an adult drama episode in your parking lot, right? But then I have other administrators and leaders who do a lot of support, but then do not tactfully confront when it's time for a return on that investment. You need a balance of both. And that's how we create the necessary changes needed for our kids to benefit from our work.
All right, Luis, we're moving towards wrap up. This has been an awesome conversation, but I've got 4 rapid fire questions to finish up with you. So we like to leave
Sure.
our colleagues with a couple things to think about and maybe a few words of advice. The first is a book you think everybody should have read or should be reading or should read going forward.
Transforming School Culture by Dr. Anthony Muhammad. He introduces audiences to the subcultures that lead to then reading Time for Change. But I think that's a classic piece of work there that introduces us to the fact that we're all good people, but we all have different reasons why we may resist and why we may behave the way we behave in schools.
Love that recommendation and that it leads to your book, Time for Change. So thank you also. That's very kind of you to offer his first. That's pretty amazing. There he is. What a leader. Okay, second question. how do you protect your own energy? You talked about being at the end of working with a lot of people over a period of time. We have a lot of colleagues, obviously, who are putting a lot into it. What do you do to protect your own energy?
I've started digging into the research on wellness, to be honest with you, especially as I grow a little older. The importance of knowing when to turn it off, the importance of knowing what to eat, the importance of knowing how to keep my body in a state of health, along with my mind. So for me, it's really sort of, it's little things. I've started embracing what a cold shower does for you in the morning. And so now I only take cold showers because that helps inflammation, and the importance of, eating right and not eating after 6 anymore, as hungry as I might be afterwards, and drinking a lot of water. Just there's a whole lot of research on the things that we can do to sustain the kind of momentum this work requires. And I think it's important to tap into that.
And
I
3
will just tell
cheeseburgers
you,
doesn't do it?
Kevin, Luis, after a full day of presenting, then he goes to the gym in the hotel. I go to my room. So I sometimes will pass him in the elevator, and we're not heading to the same place.
That's pretty impressive, Luis. All right, another question for you. What is something you think superintendents should stop doing?
Oh, that's a good question. They should stop doing. I think superintendents need to stop focusing so much on managing the district. Not that that's not important. I get it, but also give some love to creating the kind of leadership structures in sites that help change the district and help lead people within the district. That's the only thing I can come up with right now, because I meet some superintendents that are amazing managers. But let me put it this way. Let me be a little bit more succinct, because this just came up. Superintendents need to stop requiring their teachers to go to PD and not attend the PD, because I go to some district where superintendents introduce me and then come back at the end of the day. I'm always impressed when superintendents actually attend the PD with their teachers. Hence, I'm not just going to be really good at managing the buildings. I'm going to be really good at leading the people in the buildings with the science that's out there on how to do that. So there
To
you
get
go.
your hands into the soil.
Yes, absolutely.
Great suggestion. I will tell you that a lot of us reflected, some of us right during your keynote, because we had colleagues in the room that we work with, on the really good work that we thought might be happening that was represented in your material. And then also recognizing that we're too far on the management side, that some of our meetings could be better devoted to conversations that would be leadership conversations, not just management conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, we kind of were there in a negative space. What should they stop doing? Last piece of advice. What should they be doing? Something they should be doing. I think you kind of finished there around the PD, but anything else you would say, do this?
Continuously remind the adults in your organization what's at stake if our kids don't walk out with the skills needed to be successful today. And that's not always showing a time bomb video. Sometimes it's bringing kids back and having them share, hey, my life is this way based on what I experienced here. Sometimes I think it's celebrating where we've been successful. I think we have to be constantly reminding our hardworking faculty and staffs who are caught in this like cycle of a roller coaster that never stops. Hey, we're doing this because in the end, we want these kids to have the quality of life that we would want for our own children, and finding creative and different ways of reminding them what's at stake and what our moral imperative was that led us to want to embrace this profession is going to be key to keeping commitment at the forefront and not buy-in.
Got 5 dads on the screen. You talked about your 3 daughters. I know that my colleagues think about this the same way, and I want to hone in on that piece, what we would want for our own children. I love that. Such a great way to be thinking about the seeds in the soil and what we owe to our kids. So, Luis, thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank
From
you.
all of us super saucers to you, we really appreciate it.
Appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Just before you go, 2 things. You had mentioned while you were giving the keynote that you had looked at the itinerary for the workshops being offered through the conference, and you highlighted one or two that you might advise to see. One of them was titled "The Power of One," which my assistant superintendent and I were delivering. And while we usually expect 25 or 30 people to stop by, we had a standing room only crowd. Can you please state for the record that I did not ask you to plug our workshop? Thank you.
Ken did not ask me to promote his breakout. It stood strong on its own. So way to go, Ken.
And to return the favor, a number of superintendents approached with interest of having you visit their districts and work with their groups.
Yeah.
Is there a best contact information that you could share so people who want to connect with you are able to do so?
Absolutely. Contact my friends at Solution Tree. We have a wonderful relationship with them. Solution Tree is a family, and if they're interested in me coming out, contact my friends at Solution Tree. They will get a hold of me and we'll make it happen.
And I'll just tell you, personal experience, Luis has been in my district. He's worked with the teachers in Windsor, and what you see in this conversation, what you see in the keynote, what you see is what you get. And that's just a great human being who is genuine and really leads by example. And so I couldn't endorse him any more than having worked in our district. And he made his way all the way to Little Windsor somehow, although his flight sometimes gets delayed, but can't endorse him highly enough.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that.
Thanks again, Luis. Gentlemen, go forth and keep transforming. We appreciate your time, Luis, and all of you have a good one. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Head toss, check my names. Baby, how you feeling? Head toss, check my names. Baby, how you feeling?